we work hard to try to give away as much as possible. Now we want real-time collaboration. We want live content APIs. We want asset pipelines that are really efficient and caches your data. We want global CDN. We want all of these things. And there's no way to kind of package that as a kind of single database with like a JavaScript application. In this company, we use dumb as a positive word. When the solution is dumb, it means, oh, it's so dumb, it feels like it's almost irresponsible. But it means it's easy to understand. Yeah. Then we realized, oh, we are actually a database company with a very, very weird go-to-market.
Hello, Internet. Welcome back to the Code and Content Podcast, the podcast for conversations at the intersection of code and content. Do you have a favorite database? I don't. I've never actually really used databases outside of ones that the content management systems that I've been using have forced me to use. And my experience with content management systems before joining Sanity and before using Sanity was WordPress. And to be honest, database handling and asset storage was my least two favorite things about the platform. So the whole idea of Sanity was really sold to me on the fact that what if I could just do the fun stuff, building out the administration panel, and all of the annoying stuff was handled for me. In the time since, I've learned there's a lot of people who have favorite databases and really like the ability to choose the database that they prefer. Well, I sat down with Simen to sort of talk this out, but I wanted to have this conversation. What does it mean that we don't allow you to self-host a database? Why not? And I think a point that gets made immediately, which is a really great one, is that ideally the content lake is your new favorite database for this particular application purpose. We use databases in Sanity to build the platform. We still recommend you use a database for database-specific operations. But if you're going to store content somewhere, maybe a content-optimized database is the best choice for that. I promised at some point that this podcast wasn't going to be an ad, but this podcast probably is the most ad-like, but it's definitely, I wanted to have this conversation. I thought this conversation was great. You be the judge. Here's Simen, CTO of Sanity. Simen, thank you for joining me today. You've been there at the core of a lot of the decisions, probably every decision, actually, if I'm honest, about how Sanity
It turned from like in the beginning, I made all of them because we were was one of the few people here doing that. Now it's more like I'm inserting myself into all of this. You have lots of smart people now making very good decisions, and sometimes I insert myself.
Yeah. But there's this fundamental decision I want to
Absolutely.
talk about at the core of Sanity, and somehow it powers the entire experience, and yet I think we kind of undersell it in a way, is the content lake.
Yeah.
The back end for the whole system that works. And the reason I want to talk to you about it is it prevents us from letting you use your own database. And I want to rip the Band-Aid off of this conversation is that you can't bring your own database to Sanity. You've got to use the content lake. Now, I'm just playing devil's advocate for you.
No, fair point.
I think
you can't bring your favorite database because it's going to be the content lake. That would be my perspective. But fair point.
It's your new favorite database. So like,
well, I heard someone say like, oh, I did all this and I didn't even use a database. I'm like, yeah, you did use a database. You just called the content lake.
Yeah, okay. So I mean,
fair point. In terms of strategy, for Sanity, it would be super nice to say like, no, if you like MySQL, if you like SQLite, if you like MongoDB, go use that.
Yeah.
And yes, we can't say that.
So what was the motivation or the major benefit? Because like I said, I'm just being silly for the sake of as a bit of an argument.
That's a good point.
But because I think it's great to not have to think about it personally. It was the last thing in the world I wanted to deal with.
If you didn't, I would still make the argument that you shouldn't. I often say, and it's the truth, Sanity was created in anger and self-defense and anger. Like it was not a positive experience. We were creating, we used to be an agency. We were creating really content-intensive applications for new customers that we had very high ambitions for, and we just hated everything we were able to give them. Like then was WordPress or Contentful was the real choices for us, and so in anger we said like, I don't want a content API. I want a database. I want a database that I can put on the internet. I don't want a database where I have to have lots of middleware that I have to create, because that's the part of one part of like putting, let's say you use Postgres or something. Now you can't kind of communicate from your front-end application directly to Postgres. That's just not possible. So you're going to have a lot of middleware to take care of security, access control, all kinds of lifecycle kind of management, stuff like that. So we basically are building a data layer on top of your database anyway. So that's the one thing, as a kind of person who wants to build up experiences, I don't want to deal with that part. So you could say like one choice would be to say, okay, you can bring your own database, and then we would have some kind of data layer that would kind of adapt that, say, to the APIs of the Sanity studios and the Sanity kind of front ends. Could be viable. Now we want real-time collaboration. We want live content APIs. We want asset pipelines that are really efficient and caches your data. We want global CDN. We want all of these things. And the only way to deliver that, I mean, it's super, like, of course, there are ways to pay us a lot of money if you're a huge enterprise with very big needs. But if you're not, it's incredibly cheap. Like laughably cheap. And we are working really hard to make it as laughably cheap as possible, because we really don't want, if you're an individual developer or a small team, we really don't want your money. We just want like an appropriate amount of money so that we don't leak business from like really big enterprises.
Sure.
Apart from that, we work hard to try to give away as much as possible. Because we want to learn together, we want to explore it together with the community using Sanity. So we are giving away a lot of value that we create in this kind of global, and this is not like one database. It's a huge swarm of systems all over the planet that is kind of doing all of these things, powering all of these kind of APIs and experiences. There's no way to kind of package that as a kind of single database with like a JavaScript application on top, and it wouldn't scale. And it, frankly, sometimes when I'm a little bit in the angry corner, I feel like when the people, which that's clearly, I'm usually very happy-go-lucky. I don't churn, I don't kind of worry at night, but like sometimes there's a bit of annoyance, and the annoyance can be around this kind of, bring your own database, where I see it sometimes when you look at the actual features, is a little bit of a, let's not say it's a bait and switch, specifically not that, because of course, but some people might claim that it is, because the stuff you can do at the point where it's a bring your own database is very limited. Very often when you want these kind of modern conveniences, you will have to build a lot of stuff, or you will have to go on the kind of pro plan, which is actually not the bring your own database anymore.
So it's not like it's a one-to-one, is it? Like you either choose your own database or you choose Sanity. It's like you choose your own database and then you're responsible for so many more things, and you've got to build so many more things, and you've got to maintain all of those technology choices as well. But that's what it's all being wrapped up with, the back end, we call it.
That's the intention. Like that's why I would never...
just to lock people in, is it like that? Because I think that's the sort of hot take from 1,000 yards.
That's a great point. Like, and of course, we want to lock you in by being incredibly valuable and convenient. But also we make sure we have like Grok is an open standard. Like, to be fair, no one has adopted it, but it's documented. There's a test suite for it.
No one has adopted it yet.
Do adopt it. But the point is, like, we do everything to make sure that's an open standard. Same thing for our mutations, same thing for portable text. We document these open standards because we want to make sure we signal that we don't want to lock you in, and your data formats are documented and open and standardized. When it comes to how things are stored inside Sanity, I always wanted it to be we in this company we use dumb as a positive word. When the solution is dumb, it means it's so dumb it feels like it's almost irresponsible, but it's easy to understand. And the simplest way to think about a database for me as a JavaScript developer, when I'm thinking of me as a TypeScript, JavaScript kind of front-end developer, is a bunch of JSON files, just like a bunch of JSON records in a file. And that's how the content, like, that's what it looks like from the outside. It's just a bunch of JSON documents. And the thinking was, we'll do that, and then we magic all of the, like, how you can query that in a performant way. The point is that in the end, if you download all of those JSON documents, you have all of your content. And you can move it anywhere, and it's pretty simple. No one is doing that. Like, if you look at our the people
alternative providers.
If you look at, exactly, like, we get a lot of business from other companies. We don't lose a lot of business to other companies. Like, when you come to the house of Sanity, you stay, and it's not because of our evil tactics. It's because of the sweet value, in my opinion. Humble opinion, very humble. So when we got to San Francisco the first time, they told Danish people told me, the founders of Netlify told us, don't be so Scandinavian. I'm trying not to be so Scandinavian.
I do like though that explanation of it all, because it's I guess hosted backends can look like a black box from the outside, but if you break down the disparate parts of what makes the content lake so great, it is a bunch of open standards, understandable formats, JSON files. So yes, we do compile all those things together, but it's for great convenience,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I don't know if I said it before we started recording or after, but like this idea of a database that's optimized for content is really what this is. And it's not just text storage as well; it's assets and everything else, because these are all the concerns of a content-driven application. Needs to have all of these things. Needs to have assets and serve from the edge and a CDN and a way to query it. So you might as well bundle all of that up into one thing.
Yes. State of the universe back when we created the content lake was that, and that was part of the anger part, was like, because there were this idea of structured data, of course, was there, contentful was there, graph CMS, now high graph, I think,
Yep.
what existed. So the idea of having kind of content in records in a like JSON-like store was there. The access patterns was one thing. Like, I don't want it to be about. They were all structured a little bit like you were making a blog, in my opinion, like WordPress-based style APIs.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's not what I'm making. So like, and why do you decide that? So one thing was like, I want it to be a database API. I want it to be like, I query however I want and shape it however I want. So it has to be as powerful as a kind of SQL style database. Yeah. Now SQL is for tables. So we needed a new query language that was for hierarchical documents, like JSON documents. So that's why we created Grok. We tried not to create a query language. I'm sorry that we had to. But it's pretty good for what it is.
Be a whole other episode, but I'm glad.
Yeah, we'll do. The point is, like, we tried our best to use GraphQL. Turns out that it's not a query language, it's an API pattern. So like in the end, we had to create one. We didn't want to. I'm sorry. It was necessary.
Yeah.
It was the least of our the least problematic choice. Now at least we have a good one. Next thing was text. Most other solutions at that point, this has become improved over time, used model text as a separate universe.
Yeah.
Like text is they will usually Markdown or something similar, or some kind of
store it as a string.
It's just some kind of string, HTML at worst, but like most people have gotten beyond that point at least. But like my point, like I'm working with content. Content has data embedded in it. When I make a link, I want to make it explicitly about what it is. I want to be able to say a link is to a product, or this is like a sidebar. It is supposed to have like this structure. I want structured content. Intermixed with text. That's why we had to create portable text. It's a format where for text, which is still data. So that's kind of, and then we realized in the end when we then kind of created the company, because it took us some time to realize this should be a product. We used this as an internal tool first. Now we realized
it was just an alternative CMS built internally.
Initially, we thought, like, of course, the market is going to catch up. We just make this for our customers and make it super easy to migrate out of, like, actually, because
so migration was actually your own escape plan.
Yeah, we plan to kill it in a couple of years when the market caught up, and actually the market never caught up. And MIT, I think, told us like, what is this thing? It's better than anything we can buy. Why can't we buy it? And I'm like, okay, we should probably make a product instead. Point is, then we realized, we are actually a database company with a very, very weird go-to-market, because we are a content database. That's the only thing we charge for.
Yeah.
Like everything else we just give away. I think you're right. One of the challenges is I feel we've been talking about Content Lake for more than 2 years. And I feel it's not really sticking, to be honest. There's like, I was just coming out of the office now to get into this recording session with you, thinking like, we need to change the name of it or somehow, because it's not like even people who are really into Sanity struggle to see the power of that kind of infrastructure.
Yeah.
And we need to kind of figure out how to paint that picture for people.
Yeah. I think because I was a Sanity user long before I was an employee as well. And to me, the saving grace was just, I got sick of database migrations with WordPress. I got sick of being responsible for backups and for asset storage and all of that as well. So the pitch to me with Sanity always was, what if all of the worst parts of maintaining a CMS were done for you and you just got to do the fun parts, which is messing around with the content management part. And so that's what Sanity does. The studio is so much fun to play with, and all of the hard parts, it just factored away so you never think about it. But that's probably at some detriment is that, yes, the most powerful part of the platform is the part you're not thinking about
Yeah.
because it's just all taken care of. But yeah, it's something once you sort of peel those layers back and see what it can do, I think that's, we could definitely put a lot more emphasis on.
It's
that
kind of interesting. Like
efficiency.
you're right. Like because with the design kind of ethos here is like make it just work. Like people just want to sell shapewear or publish news.
Yeah.
But they want like you said, they come to Sanity because they want to customize the thing. They want to build exactly what the business or organization needs. That's what we try to give people, and then make sure everything else just works. So sometimes I could get a question like, oh, we need to do some kind of complicated stored queries thing because we can optimize something. And then I'm like, but then people have to like declare a number of like stored queries things we can optimize. And like, that sounds like a lot of kind of a whole big thing that I have to think. And I'm just trying to, and in my mind, I'm almost like, I'm just trying to sell speakers faster with more kind of flair.
Exactly. It's that's good engineering, and isn't it, to be focused on the customer problem?
And also keep like, I want you as a user of Sanity to think about the things that are special to you as a company or a person or organization or project. And we just do all the other things and just make them disappear.
Yeah.
And to your point, sometimes we disappear them too much, so people don't realize all the value they are getting.
Yeah. It's all just beneath the surface. But overly focusing on does it use my favorite database technology? I know that those are fun discussions to have as engineers, but they're perhaps not the most productive in am I solving my customers'
and behind the scenes, it's Postgres, and it should be your favorite database technology.
Well, there you go. So I mean, if we slap the word Postgres on the marketing, maybe that does better.
We support none of the APIs, but we have all of the value.
Yeah, that will get to the bottom of it eventually. So, no, that's cool. There's all sorts of other reactive things we can do off of it as well, isn't there? So like the live content API is one thing we spoke about a lot at the end of last year, but I think webhooks are drastically undersold too, the way that you can be reactive to changes within the content too.
Yeah.
And how we can do that at a fine-grained level, like only if this field changes in this document, then fire this action. All of those sorts of things that you can do without having to handhold a database along the way is really cool.
And right now it's so hard to not talk about the stuff coming out in April. It's like almost impossible to not talk about it. We will not talk about it.
Trying to peel it out.
Exactly. But it's going to be amazing. And it's going to be a lot about that.
And all the more features that we can distribute when we do own the back end, right? Like if we had to try and make those features, but then distill it down to people who had their own flavors of databases below the surface, might make that more difficult. But if we hold all of that logic together, we can just develop those features and then ship them to everyone.
Like our most, in my opinion, successful customers are building all these kind of automations. They are using the webhooks. They are using the live kind of APIs and stuff like that to build AI-driven pipelines of like Love Holidays. Some people have probably seen David and Ness, used to be CTO, their presentation, showing how they drive these automated pipelines, editorializing this UK-based travel agency. They have 50,000 hotels. They have automated how they kind of aggregate, editorialize, and bring that into their content lake, and then translate that into German AI. These are all AI based, and they A/B test everything, so it's like better in terms of commercial effect than the stuff they used to do. They build all of that. These are really hardcore engineers, so of course they build all of that. It's hard, but very valuable. The same thing we see like Takovas bringing different systems in Shopify, their ERP system, like brought into Sanity. These are really hard things to do right now. So that's kind of part of what I'm thinking about right now. How can we, because what we did with Sanity was make a front-end engineer building the front ends, be able to just run the whole content operations, like the content kind of workflows and editorializing things, but also these kind of back-end like things. We just make the boring parts go away, and you can just use JavaScript, TypeScript for everything. And that's kind of what we're thinking a lot about now. How can we do that? You talking about the webhooks. How can we go all the way down to all of these automations and make that as simple for someone just used to writing a front end, but want some automation, some integration, some triggers, and just be able to do all of that inside Sanity.
That's cool. Yeah. So, I mean, in summary, I think I wanted to start the discussion about database selection choices, because that's the fun conversation to have as engineers. We'll sit around and talk about our preferences, but really, as it relates to like the theme of this series, is if you are focused on the content that's being stored, more than how it's being stored, and the outcome of that content, and the life cycle of that content, what it is now, what it will be, and what it means to the person consuming it. Like when you are more focused on those things of the content rather than how it's technically stored, it yields to better results, right? It is better outcomes.
Yeah, you had a great point in somewhere, probably in our internal Slack. You said self-hosting is free only if your value over time is zero.
Yeah.
And it's a similar thing here. I feel like if you have the argument for highly abstracted services like ours is if you are aligned with the goals of the company that you're using.
Yeah.
Now you have someone who are investing alongside your goals, of course. When you can use Sanity is a generalized database. You could probably use it if you're a kind of Bitcoin exchange. You could probably use Sanity as some kind of database there. You shouldn't, right? Because we are investing in it as a content database.
Yeah.
You should use it for that, because that's what when we think about things, we think about automation, we think about live by default, we think about things that people who build experiences and content operations think about. So we see if you invest your kind of time in Sanity, then you have this company kind of covering your back and kind of building things ahead of you or alongside you. If you are building your own thing, then you are building your own thing, and that's cool.
Yep.
But it can be very time consuming, and you very often end up, like my opinion, like we choose technologies here the same way. Like we're talking about how to globalize our configuration management on our servers, and what we look for is someone who solve that as a service, because like we don't want to think about that. That's not our business. Like doing it a little bit better makes no difference for our bottom line. So like hiring great engineers is hard. Great engineers should be working on the special problems for the business. So we do that, and you should do that.
Yeah.
And we are that for content.
Excellent. That's a good closing point. All right.
You said this podcast shouldn't be about sales pitches. I'm sorry.
No, I think neither of ourselves can help ourselves, can we? So I think we this is us reined in. I think.
No, but I think the point is like this is genuine. This is like I'm working with this because I believe this.
Yeah.
Like this is not my sales pitch. This is what I believe, and this is the reason I am working on this.
This is the true problem of us trying to do this episode too. Is I think I'm so much on the same side as you. I don't want to choose those things because I want to focus on the problems I'm trying to solve.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I'm sorry. It's not a sales pitch. It's just what I believe.
Yeah. Likewise. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you this was great.